by the 15 municipalities in the Maitland watershed. It is a very large watershed. They were established in 1951 at the request of the municipalities to work on issues that go beyond municipal boundaries, such as flooding and erosion and soil conservation. Next one, Steve. So our board has established three major priorities going forward. We have limited resources, so we really want to focus down on the things that our board thinks are really important. And one is strengthening our flood and erosion safety services due to the amount of development that we have located in flood and erosion risk areas across the watershed. Approximately $500 million worth of assessments located in areas subject to flooding or erosion. Second one is strengthening our watershed stewardship services. We have 470,000 acres of prime agricultural land, so our board thinks we should be working with landowners to help them keep soil and nutrients on the land and out of the water and out of your municipal drains. And last but not least, we want to try and stabilize our financial base so that we can strengthen those services. So that means we've had to cut back in other areas, such as conservation areas. But I'll touch on that later. So now I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and he's going to talk about flood erosion safety services and flood on June 23rd.
The flood and erosion safety service has two main program areas. The first is flood forecasting, and the second is planning and regulation. So we often get asked about what are our roles and responsibilities versus the municipality when it comes to regulations particularly. So the Conservation Authorities Act and the Building Code Act are two complementary pieces of legislation. So the role of Maitland Valley is to ensure that the form and feature of the function of the form and feature is not interfered with, and then the building code, the municipality under the Building Code Act wants to make sure that structures are adequately protected. So a really good example is, let's say someone wants to build a house in a floodplain. So Maitland Valley is looking at, is the house going to impact flooding either upstream or downstream? And once Maitland Valley's decided, yes, you can build a house safely, it's not going to impact flooding upstream or downstream, then the municipality under the Building Code Act works to make sure that house can be safely constructed. So those are really how those two pieces work hand in hand. So moving over to flood emergencies, what's our role and what's the municipality's role? So the municipality is really the boots on the ground. They're the ones providing the notification to the residents, doing the evacuations, opening the shelters, closing roads. And the Conservation Authority's role is to provide the information to the municipality, things like the timing of the flood, the magnitude of the flood, so they can make the proper decisions. So in short, Maitland Valley is providing the municipality with the information they need to make decisions, and then the municipalities enacting their emergency. Next slide, Phil. So Phil already mentioned that there's $500 million worth of development at risk throughout the watershed. So that's, as you can see on the slide, those are all the different flood and erosion prone areas in our watershed. So there's thousands of residents that live and work in flood and erosion prone areas. Next slide, Phil. So what Maitland Valley does is, this slide shows our flood forecast network. So we operate and maintain a provincially mandated flood forecast network that has 16 stream gauges and 31 rain gauges. So this provides Maitland Valley duty officers with real-time information. This is 24 hours a day, 365 days a year that we staff this. And this is really important to have a good monitoring system for events like June 23rd, which I'm going to talk to you shortly. And in a nutshell, an event like what happened in June 23rd this year is the rain forecasts don't give us always accurate information about that a significant flood event. So it's important that we can know exactly how much rain hit the ground to provide the proper warning to our municipalities. So talking specifically about June 23rd, so you can see in this slide is what Harriston looked like in that afternoon. So rainfall varied from 110 millimeters near Port Albert up to over 175 millimeters upstream of Harriston. The night before, Environment Canada was calling for 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. So this literally came out of nowhere overnight. So we had damage to agricultural land, homes, and cottages across the north part of our watershed. The resultant flows were 5 times higher than has been recorded in the 48-year history for during the summer months. So it was a very significant event. In Harrison alone, there were over 100 homes that were flooded, and damages are in the $10 to $15 million range. So particularly for Harrison, this was an incredibly damaging flood. Next slide, Phil. So that, although we had the biggest damages in Harrison, and they happened quite quickly on June 23rd, though that flood moved down through the watershed. So here is just downstream of Harrison. Next slide, Phil. Just gonna scroll to the photos. So here we see in Gorey, we had emergency services there, and this was basically the Gorey Dam was well beyond the capacity and resulted in the failure of the emergency spillway. So here we have emergency services preparing for road closures there. So peak flows continue to move downstream. And here we have the dam that you all own, the Houghton Dam. One of the things that was key about this flood that was a real benefit to Wingham was really just the North Maitland that was so heavily impacted by the rainfall. And so the North Maitland is what the Houghton Dam is on, but we also have the Middle Maitland, and upstream of that also is the Little Maitland. So in this particular event, the Little Maitland and the Middle Maitland didn't have near the rainfall. And that was one of the reasons why this event in the area, the commercial area, like by Tim Hortons, didn't really see any big impact. So that was a big savings for North Huron. You know, had the Middle and Little Maitland been hit as badly as the North Maitland, it would have been a much more significant event in the Tim Hortons area for Wingham. Moving on downstream, in the Lower Maitland, there were trailer parks that were hit, you know, where people heeded the flood warnings. Trailers and parks were evacuated. In some places, those warnings weren't always heeded, and there were damages in those parks. And moving on, right down, next slide, please, Phil. Here we see this is the outlet of the Maitland River. On the top right is the Sifto salt mine there, and you can just see that brown water of all that topsoil moving out into the lake, as Phil talked about, and the stewardship services, the desire to keep that, you know, that topsoil on the land productive for agricultural producers. Right. So moving on beyond the 23rd flood, next slide, Phil. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Wingham Special Policy Area. So we've highlighted in red the special policy areas in Wingham. You can see on the aerial photograph with your North Huron West Ghats Community Complex there on the right. So we often get asked about this special policy area. So 25 years ago, it was approved by the provincial government at the request of the former town of Wingham. So the province approved special policy areas if it allowed a municipality to increase the footprint of their business district to help for the prosperity of the communities. The big if on that was a few things. Is one, the municipality needed to be able to demonstrate that it wasn't going to impact flooding upstream or downstream. Two, that you could actually realistically flood-proof these structures, and three, you still had emergency access. So all those things were done. The Maitland Valley Conservation Authority's role was to help make sure that flooding wasn't going to be increased upstream or downstream as a result of infilling for the special policy area. So one of the key issues for the special policy area are clearly flooding, which is obvious. Many don't realize there's methane gas issues there, as well as soil issues due to peat buried below. So those are the key items that are addressed in the special policy. Slide 4. So here on this aerial photo, we have, we're looking at Highway 4. Tim Hortons is the top left of that intersection there. So on the right side of Josephine Street towards the river, that is in the special policy area, zoned for development. And that includes gas station. And so basically any development that happens in that area has to conform to both the special policies area, the special policies as well as the zoning. So in this case, it could mean a gas station because it does meet the test of the special policy area and it does meet the test for the zoning. So Over the past year, we've received many inquiries from the public asking why development is allowed to occur in the floodplain in this area. So MVCA worked with North Huron to develop a joint letter to the editor that was signed by the chair of the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, as well as the Reeve of North Huron, outlining the history of the special policy area and conditions under which development is allowed to occur. So we also worked with staff at North Huron to develop information for the public and developers on each area within the special policy area. And we've recommended to staff at North Huron that this information be posted on your website. And it's posted on our website as well. So.
Okay. The last item on our list this afternoon is the Wawanosh Conservation Area, which is in East Wawanosh. It's on Nature Center Road, and it's been our primary conservation area for outdoor ed programming for many, many years. Unfortunately, we've had to close the facility due to structural concerns with the barn portion of the building this year. And our board is assessing the future direction of our outdoor education program and the facilities and equipment that we need going forward. In the short term, we're providing outdoor education services at the Falls Reserve. We have a surplus building there that isn't being used, so we can use it for programming. And we're also using Northwood Public School in Ethel for programming for that side of the watershed. So again, they have educational grounds and facility there that we can use. We're also doing more community-based programming, although on a reduced scale. The Nature Center building is also used for storing trees in the spring. The property is still available for the public to use, and we are planning to ensure that there are washroom facilities on site. So our board is doing a facilities review, much like all of our municipalities are. We all have lots of infrastructure and it's all aging. So we have an old pole shed that we use as a workshop in Roxeter. So we're looking at ways to try and consolidate some of the uses from the Nature Center, possibly in Roxeter with a replacement structure. The board hasn't finished its review of our infrastructure yet, but basically we just can't afford to all of the renewals of infrastructure that we'd like. So we are, or the board will be looking at a plan for going forward for programming as we go forward. We have purchased a trailer that we can use to haul our education services around to schools and to do programs on other properties as well. So we're having to look at options. Conservation areas is an area that we are trying to look at ways to reduce costs and reduce some of our infrastructure going forward. So that, Reeve Vincent, is our presentation for this evening, and we'd be happy to answer any questions or any comments from council, because I think you're all struggling with a lot of the same issues that we are.
Deputy Reeve?
Just for clarification, when we start to get a heavy rain, the beepers goes off, Steve Jackson there makes his way to the conservation area. He's there 24/7 along with other people. So when there is a flood, there is people there, at least 2 people there all the time until things start to subside. So it does put a lot of pressure on our staff to make sure that we have adequate staff there they can't work there 24 hours a day. They have to be spelled off. So the other people are trained to fill in when these guys have to have time off.
Our bigger challenge is Environment Canada and M&R aren't giving us the type of information we need. Like, we're not meteorologists, that we need better forecasting from them. So we have met with our MPs and MPPs and said, you know, the federal and provincial government has a lot more resources than we do, and we need better forecasting and better weather events or information.
How of your budget with regards to the conservation portion of it and the education, I guess, part of that budget, how much are we talking that it would be a part of your overall budget? Like what is that portion of it? Is it?
It's under 100,000. I'm not sure what it is this year, but it's less than 100,000.
for the education portion of the Maitland Valley's budget
Yeah.
for the,
Probably closer to 60,000 now, and a lot of that money comes from user fees from school children using it, or using those services. So out of our operating budget's of approximately 2 million. So it's just, there's such a great need on the stewardship side, which a lot of it we're having to do with project funding that you apply for year to year. And on the flood forecasting side, you know, the province hasn't increased their grant for that. It's been stuck at $70,000 since 1998. So in today's dollars, that's like $50,000. So the province is not pulling their share in terms of being a partner in here. So.
thanks, Phil.
So Phil, I'm looking at the nature center here again. So that building is condemned. It can't be used anymore. Is that what you're saying? And there's the possibility of it being torn down. Is that it?
Well, it's the structural concern. Steve could explain better than I can, but there's concern that it would fall down in a windstorm. We had an assessment done on a number of years ago by an architect and an engineer, and they were concerned that that building could come down if there was a windstorm.
Yeah, it was the architect and engineer felt that although it meets the standards for an agricultural building, that it didn't meet the standards for an occupancy assembly for a school building with an adequate level of safety during the windstorm.
We're just looking at other ways to deliver the same service. The property is still there. You know, are there other things that we can do, such as putting a picnic shelter up with washrooms or lower cost infrastructure is sort of what we're looking at. A new building, I think the estimate for a new building was like 600,000. So, you know, we have lots of old infrastructure, so the board's trying to look at everything holistically and decide what's essential and what isn't. We have $500,000 worth of flood forecast equipment in the field that we have to look after. So we have to make choices just like you do. It's like riding in a boat with 100 holes in it. You got 10 plugs. Which 10 holes are you going to put them in?
If they had better forecasting, you'd be able to know if that building was going to get blown down and when.
Yeah, that's true too.
Okay, it's unfortunate. Is that it for questions? Okay. Thank you for that portion.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, and moving to 5.2. That's you again, Phil.
I know, I just have to change shirts here.
Okay.
I got to dress like the rest of the trail committee. Come right there. Can I get you to run the slides there for me? I'll find them here. When I find it, I'll what I do, Richard. Oh, there it is. Okay, got it. No, I don't have it.
Just go to the one in the lower left there.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
The down arrow, thank you. All right, am I dressed appropriately here now? So again, good evening, Ray Vincent, members of council. Thanks for the opportunity to let the Wing Trail Committee provide council with an overview of the work that we've been doing on the park and the trail. I'd like to start by introducing the members of the Trail Committee that could make it this evening. So on my right, I have Terry DL and Sharon Weaver, and our newest member is Mike Martin. Murray Ritzma and Mike Smolinars and Char Breitmeyer couldn't make it this evening. So we've circulated a report to council. So I'll just hit the highlights of the work that we've done this year. And just like I said last year, we're not here to ask for money or to complain. We're just outlining some things that we did. You know, we're trying to help. So first one, Terry, is on September 3rd, with the assistance of PD Tree Days, a 100-meter buffer strip was planted with trees and shrubs. 116 trees and shrubs were planted along that strip. And the next slide, please. And 16 members of the Wingham Ironman hockey team also participated in the planting project. We had 34 cubic yards of wood chips to move. So it's great to have all these young people with strong backs to help us move it all. And it helped that TD Bank is a sponsor for the Ironman to help get them up too. That didn't hurt. Next slide. The project was completed in under 3 hours, and then we all had lunch together courtesy of TD and some of the area businesses. Next. Another major project that we undertook this year was to rebuild the cedar rail fence on the east side of the trail. Jim McGee from the Belgrave area provided all the cedar rails at a reduced cost to us because it was a community project. And Mike and Sharon and Terry did all the work in rebuilding that fence. And next year, we'll rebuild the cedar rail fence on the west side of the trail and plant some flowering vines and wild roses. Next slide, please, Terry. The Trail Committee also refurbished the entrance garden located at the end of Patrick Street. And we pruned the shrubs and put down fresh wood chips and planted wildflowers around the sign this fall. And the wildflowers that were planted were donated by the Education Committee from the International Plowing Match. They didn't want to see them just go to waste, so they donated them to us at no cost. Next slide, please, Jerry. This is some of our members who worked on the pruning at the entrance gardens, Terry and Ryan Breitmeyer, Sharon and Char Breitmeyer. We spent a lot of hours working on that garden. Next slide, please. In the spring, we planted additional shrubs at the stormwater pond near the Maitland Elementary Public School. And in the fall, we planted wildflowers that were donated by the Education Committee from the Flying Match there as well. So as you can read from the report, our committee members put in over 180 hours of volunteer time on the maintaining the park and the trail this year. It was well beyond what we planned to do. The job was just a little bigger than we expected. And I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of Sharon Weaver. She contributed almost half of that 180 hours herself, including 60 hours pulling Himalayan balsam, which is an invasive weed, along the trail. So kudos to Sharon for putting all that time in. And in closing, I'd just like to thank Larry Meyer and their recreation staff, and Nicole and Stuart from the Works Department for their assistance in undertaking the work that we couldn't do. North Huron is fortunate to have such a great park and trail system, and we look forward to working with North Huron next year as well. So in closing, thank you for the opportunity to speak to council this evening, and we'd be happy to hear any comments or questions that you might have on the work that we've done.
Councillor Hallahan.
I just think we commend the committee, all the volunteers, and TD.
Thank
Did
you.
a wonderful job.
You know, I just think it's part of our role as citizens to give back to the community and help make it a better place. And just like to encourage more people to do that, because it's a lot of fun and we can get a lot done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to the committee for the work they do, because it definitely benefits the whole community by having a well-kept trail. Thank you. Okay, moving to 5.3, Terry Hamilton. And is it Wendy that you have with you?
Wendy Burrow, yes.
Okay, floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Reeve, Deputy Reeve, Councillors. I'd like to thank all of you for having us come and speak to you today. My name is Terry Hamilton. I'm an inspector. I'm a staffing inspector actually with our regional headquarters, and I was asked to be the interim detachment commander for Huron while Inspector Jason Newman is away on a course. He's actually on a 1-month course, one of the most difficult courses in the Ontario Provincial Police. It's a critical incident commander course. So once he's successful, he'll be able to command our TRUE unit, which is our SWAT team, any barricaded calls as such. So I was a sergeant here in 2008, 2009, and I jumped at the opportunity to come back in a different capacity as an interim detachment commander. Acting Staff Sergeant Wendy Burrow is here today too, and she will be answering any of the questions you may have, as the previous presenter had. So our intent today is to give you a snapshot of calls for service in the municipality of North Huron for the past 5 years. You'll see on the chart that we've outlined there, it's pretty consistent from 2012 to 2016. So what I'd like to do is present the calls for service to you and then take any questions you may have specifically about North Huron. So you'll see on our first line, we have the category of violent criminal code for the years of 2012 to 2016. So if you look, the average we have in North Huron is 13.4 calls for violent criminal code. What is violent criminal code? It's considered sexual assault, assault with a weapon, assault, criminal harassment, and uttering threats. So that kind of gives you an idea of how many calls we get in that category for the past 5 years. Property crime, 55, 33, 61, 44, 69. So an average of 52.4 calls we have in North Huron. And sorry, I forgot to mention the last category there is 2017. So that's how many calls we've had in each category from January to September. So property crime is considered break and enters, thefts of various vehicles, mischief. The next category you will see is other criminal codes, excluding traffic offenses. So from 2012 to 2016, you can see the totals there. We have an average of 7.6 calls per year, and right now we have 1. So other criminal code violations are offensive weapons, bail violations, disturb the peace, trespass at night, and breach probation. The next category is drug possession, which is self-explanatory. We have an average of 4.4 calls per year. Currently, we have 2. And I think everybody knows what drug possession is. The next category is drugs. You look across, we have an average of 2.2 in that 5-year period, and currently we have 1. So drug possession, I have to take my glasses off to read here. Drugs itself is trafficking and higher levels of that type of situation. Statutes and acts, you will see the next category. Looking across, we have 15.4 average of statutes and acts. And currently for 2017, we have 4. And in this, basically that's any kind of provincial act that we're dealing with there. So that's Landlord and Tenant, Mental Health Act, and Trespass the Property Act. The next category is operational, which is various incidents in that section. So you'll see that's the most we have, on an average 102.8 in the 5-year period. And for 2017, we have 76. So operational is basically any animal call, domestic disturbance, suspicious person, nuisance phone calls, fire alarms, missing persons, noise complaints, lost property, found property, sudden death, suspicious vehicles, trouble with youth, recovered automobiles, and other provincial bylaws. So it's quite a bit of incidents categorized in that section there. Operational 2, which you'll see is we have an average of 71.2 calls in that 5-year period. We currently have 49. And that is false alarms, keep the peace 911 hangups and 911 drop cell phone calls. Traffic is the final category you'll see there. We have an average of 40.6 calls in that 5-year time period. We currently have 39, and traffic is motor vehicle collisions. So just give you a comparison of those same categories for the entire county that we police. That's a snapshot of how many calls we're getting. So violent criminal code, 541 in that time period. Property crime, 1,484.4. Other criminal code, 348.8. Drug possession, 138.2. Drugs, 43.8. Statutes and acts, 549.8. And then you see the operational and operational 2 in traffic. So that kind of gives you a comparison of the entire county and compared to North Huron. This is the clearance rate category, and you'll see that NH stands for North Huron, and Huron County is the second category. So we have that a 5-year period. So North Huron, we have a 95.8% clearance rate, while Huron County is 90.4 for violent criminal code. Property crime, we have an average 24.3% clearance rate. Huron County is an average of 18.2. And then drug crime, we have a clearance rate of 100% in North Huron and 81.1 in Huron County. So the final category is a comparison of North Huron calls to the entire county. You'll see that in 2012 we had 339 calls for service, while Huron County had 10,320. So that's 3% of the calls the OPP are getting is in North Huron. So 2013, 14, 15, 16, you'll see the totals for North Huron and then the totals for Huron County. And then 2017, we've had 223 calls for service in North Huron and 7,097 calls in Huron County. So on average, we're doing 3% of our calls in North Huron. So that's a quick snapshot of the OPP when it comes to North Huron and Huron County. And we're open to any questions you may have of our presentation or anything else outstanding that you may have.
Councillor Vauden?
I assume that these numbers would always include all of the calls for service, whether there was any incident or not. Because if it was found that it was a mistake or something, that number is still included in these numbers and also in the clearances for that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so founded and unfounded calls. The only thing that's not getting captured in those stats are proactive. So if we do ride programs, or if we're arresting somebody on a warrant, or we're doing some sort of traffic initiative, that won't be captured. So you won't be billed for those type of calls.
Deputy Reeve?
I have a number of questions because we have some ratepayers sitting here tonight, and so they're not allowed to ask questions. So they've given me some of their questions to ask. Presently, you know that we have a lot of things going on in our municipalities, especially Blythe and East Walmarsh, as far as crime goes. It has increased considerably in the last couple of months. So one of the questions is, why is the public not being advised by the OPP of the ongoing crime and threats in our community? Now, that's not probably a fair question to you, Terry. I'm pointing that to you then, maybe.
Well, I can answer that. We are doing media releases on many of the occurrences that are happening. I am aware that there was a drone issue, and we've done some media releases on that. I think the challenge is that we have a street crime unit. A street crime unit is 5 constables and a sergeant. They're dedicated for street crime in North Huron. So they're dedicated for investigating property crimes and drug crimes. And many times they have ongoing issues or investigations that are happening that we're not going to release to the public because it's still ongoing. In fact, you may see them in North Huron but not realize they're police because they're in unmarked vehicles and they're plainclothes, they're undercover. So I think sometimes the communication is, we are trying to advise the public on certain issues, but sometimes we may not be aware of the issues that they're concerned of. I don't know if they have anything specifically. We do media releases. We have the Twitter account. We try to get all the information out there. But I don't know if there's something specific that some of your folks have that they're concerned with that we're not speaking of.
Okay, I have one specific one. A week or so ago, one of the township residents woke up in the night and saw flashlights shining into the windows, up the stairway in his home. What does this person do to protect himself and his property? Because when he got dressed and went down to the door, when he opened the door, he met these two people at the door. What does he do to protect himself?
Well, my first suggestion would be call 911 and get us going there, and we'll assist in that situation. There is, and Wendy has the stats when it comes to property crimes. And I know that we've put some of the media of the Lock or Lose It campaign, and Wendy can speak specifically about the amount of vehicles that we have stolen and the amount of sheds that we have broken into that are unlocked or the vehicles have keys in them. Wendy, do you have those stats?
So in 2017, we've had 12 thefts of vehicles, 9 of which were unlocked with the keys inside of them. So it's very difficult for us to be able to be proactive and be able to prevent them when it's easy for people to go in and get them. The new vehicles that are being made now, very difficult to be able to steal them now, or to be able to, wire them to be able to be stolen without the keys, especially with the chips that are in the keys as well. So we're finding that if the keys aren't with it or they're not accessible, the chances of the vehicles being stolen are very minimal. And if they know that in the area there might be somebody else with a car that might be unlocked with the keys in it, chances are they're going to go to your neighbor rather than they're going to steal your car. So I know people get tired of the lock it or lose it idea, but at the same point, if it is locked, chances are they're not going to be stolen.
But for that situation, call 911, and that will be a priority, and our officers will attend. Did they call 911? Do you know?
Yes, but how long will it take an officer to respond to that?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer,
Yes, I know.
because we have closest to the call. So we have officers that have assigned certain zones in the county. But on the other hand, we also often call other counties with the OPP. So surrounding here would be Middlesex, Perth, and South Bruce and Bruce. And if those officers are closer to the call, they will call. In fact, they don't even belong to Huron County, but they will come to the call because they're closer. So it varies. You can have an incident where you have one officer there, or you have an incident, depending on the severity, 10 officers there from counties surrounding here and Huron County. So it's a difficult question to answer.
So what does this person do to protect himself and his property? Well, you guys are coming. Lock the door, go back to bed, cover your head up with blankets. Ignore it, but you have to, if I have a cross dog and he bites somebody, I will be charged because I know my dog is a cross dog. So the big question is, what do these people do till you get there?
Well, they will stay on the phone with our dispatcher, and they'll give our officers updates, and we will give them updates, that person, where we are and what's going on, right? So obviously they should stay in the house, lock the doors, protect themselves inside, and we will take care of that threat.
Now, there is another number that gives out other than 911. There's a 1-300 number.
1-888-310-1122, yeah.
Yes. So if they call and leave a message on that machine.
It's not a machine, it's to our communication center. So
But there has been people who have made that call and have not seen an officer for at least 2 days. And they are reporting something that has happened. And I guess that's another part of the question, like is some of our community don't feel safe anymore. And it's not just older people. And I'm afraid some of our farmers are going to take some of this into their own hands.
I understand the concerns there, and I don't recommend that
I,
for liability issues.
yes, I
But if
know.
you have specific issues that your folks that live in your area would like to speak to us, please have them call me and we'll discuss the issue with them. Because we also have the auxiliary police constables. We have an auxiliary unit in Huron County, and they can come out to your folks living there and tell them how to make their residents much safer when it comes to something like that.
Okay. How has our crime rate changed in the last 6 months? I know you have some of the statistics, but it certainly has gone up in the last 6 months.
I think you can't just look at 6 months of time. You need to look at it over a longer period of time. And what we've seen is that we're right in line overall between the numbers from 2017 with the numbers from 2016 and 2014. Looking at the analytics and figuring out where we're going to be by the end of the year, we're going to be right in line with the average for numbers of calls for service in North Huron. So I don't necessarily agree that the crime rate has increased. Our reports are staying the same. So whether people aren't reporting it to us, but our statistics are showing it's about the same.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I know there has been a lot of reporting done. A lot of people have made calls. And we do see more police cars out in the area, but they're probably looking for drones that are not supposed to fly at night. Is that correct?
That I don't know the legislation when it comes to drones itself at night, so I can't answer that question.
Okay, I understand that they're not supposed to, they're not supposed to be so high and they're not supposed to be so big. And I think the Congress will start shooting the thing down, you know. But these are the things that are really bothering people. And if you see one buzzing around your house, you know.
And my suggestion is that the people that are concerned call the office and we'll have that discussion. Unfortunately, you may hear some concerns, but we're not hearing it, so there's maybe a communication gap there.
So would they use the 1-800 number?
They can call the Goderich office and ask
The Goderich office.
for myself or Staff
Okay.
Sergeant.
Okay,
But at the time, yes, they should be using the 1-800 number.
yes. And so they would ask for you?
Yep.
Okay,
And I'll have a sergeant follow up with them.
okay. Okay. Is that okay, Connie? Okay.
Councillor Site?
Maybe one of the things, could you kind of elaborate on how the county, how OPP in the county uses analytics to determine where they're going? Like, you're obviously not driving every road every day. So can you explain for the public to understand how you use analytics to determine where you're gonna police in the county and in the municipality?
So one of the benefits that we have is that we have what we call a attachment analyst. And so that analyst's job is to be able to look at for crime trends, be able to look at areas where there's significant motor vehicle collisions. We use the data that we have from the reports that we get, but we also use information that we get from citizen complaints for traffic complaints to be able to determine where we're going to put our resources. Because as you said, Huron County is a big place. We're not going to be able to be on every road at every time. So it's a process of using the analytics from calls for service that we're currently getting, looking at past calls for service, looking at it seasonally as well, because we know certain areas get hit at different times of the year. Talking to our community, but we also use an intelligence-based system as well. So the inspector talked about our street crimes unit. Our street crimes unit does well with leveraging human sources and human information to be able to ensure that we're putting our resources where they need to be. So, and as the inspector said, you might not always see a uniformed car or a marked car, but chances are there's going to be somebody if you have intel. But it's a joint process, right? If we don't have people telling us what's going on in the community, we have a hard time being able to put the resources there as well. So it's a process where we need to partner with everybody else as well, so that we're able to to address your concerns.
The big challenge I find is, I always have to slow Ryan, if you don't like what you see, call the OPP. So a lot of people don't want to bother us with suspicious vehicles or suspicious people, right? They think we're too busy. I can tell you that's the most effective way that we arrest people committing break-and-enters or stealing cars is from the community. The community calls us up and says, I know the people live in this area. This person's here and they shouldn't be here. And if they do that right away, that increases our ability to capture the bad guys that are breaking into places or stealing vehicles or breaking into sheds. So that's what I would ask the community. If you don't like what you see, then call the OPP. And you're not bothering us. In fact, we really look forward to getting information from the community because you know who should be in your community and who shouldn't.
Councillor Saiba again.
The other question I think what I hear a lot is in communities is how, once a call is reported, how does the communication come back to the caller that says, I've acknowledged your call, here's the follow-up, here's what I'm doing, or to understand what is going to be done, and to understand at the end of the day what the result is. So many times we hear that you report it, and then the conversation is, do I get a call back within 6 weeks, 8 months, whatever, or not at all, potentially? And that might be the issue. Can you elaborate on what that communication is from said caller to you and then back to the said caller? How does that communication work?
I can touch that one. Yeah. I think the issue is what they're doing is they're calling our communication center dispatches in London. So they talk to a dispatcher. The dispatcher puts the information down in the computer, and sometimes they ask the person, do you want the police to call you? Well, many times they say, no, this is what's happened, and they don't have to call me back. So that information is generated. The dispatcher will call the officer in that area and send them the information on their mobile workstation, which is the computers in the car. And then depending on the call, sometimes we may take a while to investigate that, and we may not get back to the people until later on. And a lot of times it depends. If we come and take a statement from you and you're a witness, and you will be advised when there's court. Other times we won't call them back. So it really depends on the person calling, whether they want the police to call back and the call itself, right? How severe it is.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vaughan.
As you may have heard, we have an intersection at the south end of the village of Blythe that is of great concern to us. It has been for many months. And I've talked to police officers, I've talked to county officials, trying to find out what is happening, what are the plans, and what's being investigated, and what are considered alternatives. We never get any information back. And I've pointed this out to OPP officers and the county staff that we need to know, because we've had rumors going around for months, all the way from suggesting that we've had a death every week for the last 4 years to the point where nobody has ever been killed at that intersection. Now, we know that both of those are untrue. There have been critical accidents, fatal accidents at that intersection. I just learned that there was one yesterday, again. And we have no word from the county or from anyone else what is being considered. Is it still being considered, or are they just writing this off and saying we're just causing havoc by making up stories? I think we're not being treated fair. I feel a very great responsibility to that community, and the concerns are deep, and we're not getting any help.
So I know that the intersection you're talking about is where the new Tim Hortons is and in the new brewery. There's been an increase in traffic as well because of those. Our role is to make sure that traffic moves safely, but it's not our role to be able to put in suggestions as to what traffic measures should be put into there. If you're looking for statistics on collisions at that intersection, that's something that we can definitely help the county with providing that information. It's also something that the county's provided at the county works is provided, MTO is provided as well, so that information shouldn't be an issue. I know the Coalition for Huron Injury Prevention is involved in this as well. I think you're involved with that committee too, with Constable Stanley. So, but it's not up to the OPP to determine what should happen at the intersection. So, we do have a traffic initiative in the area right now in the south end of Blythe that we are working on. So we do have officers assigned there on a continual basis to monitor that, not only that intersection, but to be able to monitor speeds within that area as well.
Sorry, you were saying there's a fatal there yesterday?
Not fatal, but it was an injury at that intersection. I have no details on it. I just heard it in the grocery store today. So, or another rumor.
Well, I'll make the one comment then, that I find you're probably in a quandary where is it a property crime or is it drug related? And that there's probably so much on the officers investigating as to which column they put it in, because there's one doesn't happen without the other too often, and that I sympathize with some of the officers trying to do their job, and that it isn't always easy for them. But it's one of those things that, thank you for coming and addressing these questions for us, and that I do understand that I have information from a lot of people, and a lot of different officers have relayed in confidence certain things that all is not as it may seem when you only have part of the information. So thank you very much for coming tonight to answer questions, and I know we'll be talking further.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Moving to 6.1.1. Laura, you want to sort of set the stage for this as to what's actually happening?
For the gaming bylaw?
Yes.
I don't have a presentation for it tonight because the deeming bylaw is, I have a short report that I gave to council.
Yeah.
The deeming bylaw is actually not one I provide a planning opinion on and make a recommendation based on the review against policies. The deeming bylaw is coming from the Planning Act that authorizes council to have the ability to pass a deeming bylaw or repeal such a bylaw that's in existence. So when a subdivision is created, there are lots, and those eventually become the properties, or part of the lots become the properties that eventually people will buy and build homes on. So when a lot exists as a whole lot, known just as lot with a number. So in this case, for the Ringham Protestant Reformed Church, they have lot 27 and 28. And because those are not part lots, there are two whole lots in a plan of subdivision. In this case, registered plan 416, they will not merge together. So if you wanted them to merge together, you have to pass the deeming bylaw, which is what's before council this evening for them to pass. Because legally, because they're whole lots, they won't stick together even if they're put in the same ownership. Part lots will do that because they're each a part, so those parts will stick together, but the whole lots won't, which is why council has this bylaw before them tonight so that they can pass it. The church can put both those lots in the same ownership and be registered as one complete property, so that each portion of it, each lot is not able to be sold without the other one. They will stick together. And then in this case, the church is looking at a possible addition and revising their parking plan. And as it is right now, as two separate lots, they can't put an addition over the shared lot line or extend parking across it because they're not one property. So you'd be turning it into the ability to be one larger parcel. That's kind of why the bylaw is here tonight and what the church is considering for their future plans.
Councillor Site, do you have?
Yeah, just a question about, so when in the comments here, it says that we also have the ability to authorize to repeal it.
Yes, so that would be basically undoing it.
So the issue is that that would come at a recommendation of the actual owner of the property, not staff, I'm hearing, right? That's like staff would never ask us to repeal after it's already been done. If the units is already, like there is an expansion or whatever, like it would come from the owner, correct?
Yes, if something was built across what's currently the shared lot line, we would look at that and say there is something across that line. So should each property be conveyable and sold separately from each other, there would be an issue that there's building across the lot line.
Right.
Council does have the ability to repeal a deeming bylaw because in some instances, there may be a vacant plan of subdivision that was never built. And perhaps those don't need to exist as separate lots and turn back into one large piece. But in this case, there's development all around it. And if there was future development across the shared lot line, you would want to consider, is that causing a problem if you turned it into two lots in the future?
Councillor Site?
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay. Deputy Reeve Campbell seconds. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Laura. That a number of people don't come upon a deeming bylaw, and thank you for your good explanation.
Oh, you're welcome. There hasn't been one here since I think 2009, so it's still, it's not often requested.
Okay, 6.1.2, and that is a purchase offer on 593 Cedar Street, Lima.
So the resolution for, or the recommendation for that item is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the November 6, 2017 report of the clerk/manager of IT regarding an offer to purchase the property designated 593 Cedar Street, Wingham, and further that Council accepts the offer to purchase as provided by Steve Harrington, and further that Council approves an exception to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 104 2017 be passed at the November 6th
Council meeting.
council meeting.
Ray, you're moving. Deputy Reeve Campbell seconds. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Moving to 6.2.1. Okay.
The recommendation for this item is the Municipal Greenhouse Gas Challenge Fund. Is that the Council of the Township of North Huron is hereby committed to the North Huron Streetlight Conversion Project and authorizes the submission of an application under the Municipal Greenhouse Gas Challenge Fund for this project and requests 50% funding of the total project cost.
Councillor Site
I'll move for discussion.
and Councillor Vodden seconds.
Yeah, I just have a question. So I, based on this, whatever funding we receive, this would come away from the money that we would take out of the reserve for the water and that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Good.
Any further questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, 6.2.2, the 2017 Energy Management Plan update.
The recommendation for this item is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts the 2017 Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan as presented by the Director of Finance And further, that the Council of the Township of North Huron allocates the necessary resources to develop and implement a strategic energy management plan that will reduce our energy consumption and its related environmental impact.
Councillor Syed
I'll move.
and Councillor Ritzman Dominguez seconds. Any discussion? Go ahead.
As part of that plan, I'm assuming it will have some type of what's the word I want to use? Benchmarks as to how we get plan to think we're going to implement such plans, and what costs or savings may be incorporated to that strategic plan. Is that what I'm, based on what I'm reading here?
Yeah, so in the project, in the plan for this year alone, we've made great strides with undertaking the LED streetlight conversion. And then Pat and her team did the conversion of the LED lights at the Blythe Arena. We have the HVAC units that we were converting here at the town hall with more energy efficient ones. And Phil spoke to you earlier about the tree days planting projects, and then our ongoing incorporation of energy and savings data into future tender projects. So this year alone, once all those projects are complete, we will continue to see savings on our energy bills, which we will incorporate back into this plan. But those are the number of projects that we've just completed this year. But over the years, we undertake whatever energy efficient projects we can work into our budget and record the savings in reduced kilowatt hours.
Okay.
All in favor? Carried. Okay, moving to 6.3.1, pre-budget purchase approval for the township's hanging baskets and planter flowers.
The recommendation for this item is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approve the $5,700 expense to purchase flowers for Wingham and Blythe hanging baskets and planters as part of the parks budget in advance of the 2018 budget approval.
Councillor Vaughn moving and Councillor Ritzman seconding.
Question.
Go ahead.
We have communities within our community. I'm thinking of the Auburn Horticulture Society that to pay and look after all their planting that they do, at no cost to us as a community. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't have Blythe and Wingham look after some of this within themselves through their BIAs rather than it be a budget item. This for discussion purposes.
Pat would like to speak to this.
Sure. So I think a lot of these programs originally started under the different community efforts to get flowers on the main street. And then over the years, the hanging baskets are a challenge for our volunteers because of access. We need the equipment and the manpower to water those on a regular basis. So where we do see a lot of volunteer effort might not be in the hanging baskets specifically, or the planters, which are sporadically on the bridge in Blythe and throughout Wingham. But the BIA does have a flower program. So for example, we work with them and they work with each storefront on the main street. So when we're ordering our flowers, they tap into that on an economy of scale and order their flowers. And what they've worked out with all of the store owners is the store owners originally purchased the hook and pot or the basket for their window. And each year that is replaced by the BIA through a cost recovery program for each store owner. So that adds to the flowers on the main street. So we're only paying for part of them, they're adding to that. In Wingham, also we have the Horticulture Society. They take care of numerous plantings in Crookshank Park, maintaining those gardens, as well as the Alice Monroe Garden is completely maintained by those volunteer forces. So there's far more than all of our volunteers can accomplish. So it's a shared effort, definitely, on beautification. In Blythe, we have the Friends of the Village of Blythe gardening group, and Last year, some of you may have noticed the beautiful South End sign, which was a Canada flag. That was all planted by a volunteer. They fundraise and put efforts together. Memorial Memory Garden is almost all done, managed by the volunteers. The staff do cut the grass. So I think to specifically ask them to just do this piece doesn't take into full appreciation of all of the other work that our volunteers are doing in our communities, which is manageable for them through access and their talents and their skills. And then we supplement it with these hanging baskets, as well as all of the other gardening. We work side by side with our volunteers to make sure our gardens in town looks beautiful throughout the summer months. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. We could ask them to do that, but I think they do help us in picking the colors, so our themes are consistent throughout each town. This year, both towns picked red and white, but they still picked different flowers because they want their town to be unique.
Deputy Reeve.
It's just a point of interest. We have a little hamlet in Auburn, have 3 accesses to the village, which have flowers planted, gardens planted. They have hanging baskets and pretty well all the light posts in Auburn, but they never ask for any funding. They're never acknowledged on the work that they do. It's 3 different townships that's involved. These people all work together without any acknowledgement of any kind. And we're looking for cuts in our budget. This is one I think we could cut and let the towns look after their own flowers. That's my opinion.
Councillor Gordon.
I don't see where cutting the program in Wingham and Blythe is going to do anything to acknowledge the people who are active in the village of Auburn. That's an issue for that community, not for us.
They're still part of our community.
Sure. I agree.
I have to somewhat agree with Councillor Campbell on this issue, and we've got Belgrade too.
Pat?
The hanging baskets are unattainable in our town anyways for volunteers to water. And that is actually a more expensive cost than the purchase of the flowers. The maintenance that they require, our staff are out there at dawn every day, 5 days a week in Wingham and 3 days a week in Blythe to make sure those are watered and fertilized and maintained on a regular basis. It's one part of our downtown beautification programs. And I would hate to, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we are not giving acknowledgement to all of the parks works that our volunteers do by just looking at one sliver of our parks planning and maintenance that is done by the township. There's a lot of hours. You just heard from the trail committee. They work completely in not isolation, but independent of all of the staff. They work with us. They ask us when they see what they're doing for us. We drop the stone dust off. They're out there spreading it. When there's trees that are too large for them to cut down, we're involved, but they're trimming and pruning all along those trails. So it is a partnership between our communities and our staff and resources in North Huron. So I wouldn't want to just look at this piece of the pie and say this is the one piece to ask our volunteers to do without reflecting on everything that they do.
Councillor Vaughn.
I would love to see a request from that community for assistance with the flower programs or similar kinds of projects. And I think we would welcome a request like that and would provide a complimentary service, the same as we offer when we fly.
They're not asking.
Probably will. That's
Councillor Sype.
So, I think at the end where this comes in is the difficult decisions that we have financially coming down the pipe. And in my mind, the financial difficulties that we have with reserves and that type of stuff, with infrastructure, we're looking $5,700. Yes, the savings would be great to have, but I think we have to look bigger scale service to decide what services we really need in the municipality and what we really want. And again, that's the conversation, not the $5,700 and not the communities that are the partnerships that we have, because if we get rid of them, we're gonna be worse off. Then we look at the services that we provide and ultimately make the decision on whether we can afford to have that service. And if we want the service, and maybe it has to be user pay, something to that effect. It needs to be large scale. Going at $5,700 here and there, all we're gonna do is gonna bombard our partnerships that we have and risk those partnerships, I think. I don't see that, and I take full compliment from Councillor Campbell to acknowledge that we have some financial restraint that we need to figure out. But in my mind, I think any beautification to a downtown, and again, Auburn or Belgrave or whatever, I think adds to the community more than we really know, and it adds more than $5,700. Because I think if you didn't do it, I think there'd be a worse discussion about what the community downtown might look like if you didn't have those types of things. So I think the partnership side of this is worth more than $5,700, and we're only having to pay $5,700 for it. I think, to me, that's a value add to the community. But the large scale discussion about where we are financially is a bigger ticket, and that's why I'm okay. I support this. I support this with a discussion about Auburn and Belgrave. How do we make this not about Wingham and Blythe, but how do we make it North Huron? How do we make everybody similar in the conversation and not Blythe, Wingham? It should be a beautification project for the municipality, not individual communities within it. That, to me, is what is more important.
Councillor Richmond and then go first.
I just wanted to acknowledge that it's wonderful that Auburn has such a great volunteer force, and I know the Wingham BIA does a lot of work on the main street to keep it nice. There's a large core of volunteers that go out and do a lot of weeding and painting of the hydro thingies with the fire
hydrants.
That's it. Thank you. and taking care of the flowers and all those flower baskets. I mean, that's all on the storefronts. That's all taken care of by the Wingham BIA. So it's a great partnership to have, and I agree with Trevor that we need to continue to support and encourage Auburn and East Wallanosh.
Councillor Hallahan.
I think it's wonderful we have volunteers in every part of North Huron. Not emphasizing one or the other or whatever. So, and I think this is fine for $5,700. But just remember, we can keep this equal. If they come with a request, be prepared to deal with it from these other two municipalities. Okay?
So I've got no issue.
No.
My only question is always going to be the discussion about, let's not have the discussion about Auburn, Belgrave, Wingham, Blythe. Let's have a discussion about a beautification policy within the municipality as a whole. Let's talk about it as a whole community, because that is what we are. We are a municipality that has small towns in it. Not the towns have the municipality. We have to understand that. We're not silos anymore. We got to act like we aren't. This is a community, how we have to understand that. And I think the sooner we understand that, the sooner we're all going to be better off in the municipality to understand the benefits that we have in this great municipality, because we have diversity. Let's utilize that and not talk about Wingham and Blythe and Auburn and whatever. We're one.
I think this discussion is not just about flowers. It's about equity. And I think that's a very, very important issue. I know that when amalgamation took place, equity was a big problem, and that we felt that we were neglected in this new municipality, and we were. And so I think that's the issue that we need to address is equity. fairness and not just in flowers, but in economic development and all the other things that we do. And I think we have to keep all that in mind.
So just to take us back to the request that's on the table and the motion, I guess, to think about this in long term, not just today's request. The timing on the flowers is that they have to be ordered by the end of November for the 2018 season. But there's nothing to say that we can't bring the subject back with the full cost and everything to make a decision for 2019 during your budget conversations. It's too late to make that decision today for the 2018, but it doesn't mean that we can't have a conversation of what will we do in 2019, 20, 21, 22, all those things moving forward. We are also taking a look at procurement of the flowers in a partnership with Effie McGill and their horticultural program. And, you know, we're just in the infancy of doing that and potentially having those students assist with planting and growing the flowers for our municipality. So we're really hopeful that that would be something, even if they could do some of them with their capacity, it's a great opportunity for the youth to see their project in the community and sort of, excuse the pun, and grow the community's beautification from their classroom work. So we're looking at alternatives, but tonight I just need to have an understanding of whether council wants to order the flowers for 2018, because I need to do that before the budget is really discussed by the end of November.
Deputy Reeve.
The $5,700, Pat, is only the cost of the flowers.
Correct.
That is not the cost of the labor, the fertilizer, everything else that goes involved with it.
Correct.
What is the total cost of the flowers for Blythe and Wingham? I hate to say Blythe and Wingham right now, but what is the total cost of our labor, our fertilizer, everything that's involved there?
I didn't prepare that number, but it is.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I can bring that back during budget talks for sure. But there is labor and material and machinery required to water those plants. And that is a much greater cost than the $5,700 of purchasing them. I can share that with you for sure.
Okay. Everybody got the points out? Then I take the view, the overall benefit is for the beauty of the community, and for basically the 5,700. I'm in favor of doing the ordering for this year. If we're looking at cutting back, I think we have to take a look at the bigger ramifications as to what that does to some of our volunteer groups. So that I will call the question on this. Those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving to 6.3.2, Wingham Cenotaph Stair Railing.
The recommendation for this item is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approve the proposed plan by the Wingham BIA to install a railing on the lower steps of the Wingham Cenotaph for the purpose of improving accessibility.
Councillor Ritzmutaninga and Councillor Sype, are you moving?
Yeah, I will second it, but I have a question.
Okay. Pat wants to make a statement.
I'd just like to have an opportunity to present the report and then absolutely take all questions. This is an example where the Wingham BIA came forward very interested in putting a railing on both levels of steps leading up to the cenotaph. I believe there's a photo of those steps attached to the report. The goal there was they did see people with mobility issues trying to get up to see the structure of the cenotaph. So we rarely touch the cenotaph without conversations with the Legion. And so the Wingham BIA approached the Legion and they looked at the proposal and supported them on the lower steps only because the way the ceremony goes and things like that, they need the space fluid around the top stairs. So the structure has been sent to the CBO, and he believes, although there's no railing required for, it's not because there's a fall there, it's just a support, but it does meet code for height and structure, and it is at no cost to the Township of North Huron to install this. There would be ongoing maintenance, however, it's stainless steel, so the assumption is that it would have a long life cycle.
Councillor Syke, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I guess I have no issue with the fact that it's only on the bottom step. My only concern is that we're not putting anything on the top steps because of one day. Anybody that wants to go and see that cenotaph any other day than November 11th, and they have mobility issues, are going to have an issue getting up the second set of steps because there's no railing. So, you know, I don't disagree with it might impact the service or how it might impact. I don't necessarily know, but I'm concerned about the other 364 days where I don't know how much traffic gets to the cenotaph. You know, I don't know that. But I'd be concerned about if we're talking about accessibility and we want to improve accessibility, let's improve accessibility the whole way and not just go halfway to the one, because again, you're only saying we'll help you to get to the second set, then you're on your own. So that's the way I read that, because we're not going to put one on the second level of stairs. But if there's a different opinion or something other that was discussed other than just because it was a service, then I would be glad to hear that.
So I'll read an email that was sent to the Wing BIA and then forwarded to us from the Legion. The reason for not wanting railing on second stairway is that we have air cadets on honor guard around the monument, and sometimes the cadets faint, and we do not want anyone injured. Also, we need room to place the wreaths around the monument, and railing would interfere with this. So I guess, you know, this is the first step in putting the railing up. Oftentimes these projects, people see it, and then maybe the Legion can reconsider, yeah, we think we will put that on the second portion, and I'm quite confident that the Wing and BI would support that maybe for next year. But I think this is a step in, it's a balance between accessibility and how that cenotaph is used on Remembrance Day by putting it on the first portion. By putting it on the first portion does not prevent you in the future from putting it on the second portion. It could be something that the Legion and the Wing and BIA could revisit once the first one is installed and see how the ceremony goes this year.
Go ahead.
So yeah, so the conversation about fainting cadets differs, my opinion, about what the issue is. So if it was just placing the wreaths, it's a different conversation than fainting, than a safety issue with fainting cadets. So so I support the discussion. It seemed to be it was only one side, and I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Councillor Vaughan.
I'm not denying any of that, but it seems to me that one of the issues could be in those other 364 days a year, somebody might want to get up and read the names. And then the support would be quite relevant at that point. That's for most of the year. Anyway, that's fine.
Councillor Ritzman-Taninga.
I just wanted to second what Pat said. When the Wing and BIA first started talking about putting the railings on there, they had gone to the Legion originally and said we wanted to put 2 on both sets of steps, and the Legion did come back and say no, just the first one for now, as for the reasons that they outlined in that email. So that's what's being done, and all the material and time to build those railings is being donated.
Okay. And knowing that for the service on Armistice Day, that there is assistance for those that would need it between the first and second set of steps for getting the wreaths up to be placed. So, any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. 6.33, the North Huron Public Tree Program.
The
Or Richard?
Richard, you want to read it?
Richard?
The recommendation for this report is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby suspend the public tree program for 2018 and direct staff to review the program and bring back options for council's consideration for 2019.
Pat?
So once again, this is a timing issue in that the trees need to be ordered now if we're going to distribute them in the spring of 2018. And for the past couple of years, this $3,500 has been a council expense inside council's budget. Looking and reviewing the program, we're noting that some of the trees are not getting claimed, and we're ordering trees for 100 to 120, depending on the cost of trees, residents to pick up a tree, and there's a lot not claimed, even though they've been ordered, not claimed after they've been ordered because they don't like the type we bought, and so the leftover ones are getting planted at the Wingham Cemetery. And then municipality has great access to trees when we need them because they're there. We pull them up and we plant them where we need them. Having said that, staff had a lot of discussion about whether we continue the program, whether to discontinue the program, or look at it in a new light. And a lot of other communities charge the cost of the tree back to the resident, and it puts a little bit of skin in the game for them. They have purchased that tree. They're going to come get the tree. They're going to take care of the tree when they plant it, and we'll just have a little bit more uptake. Trying to do that this year is difficult for us to measure how many to order in advance and such. We want to kind of have a year where we don't offer the program and can sit back and listen to the feedback we get from residents. If no one misses the program when they're free, then we certainly can bring back to council our findings that we should possibly discontinue the program and it's not valued by the residents. If we're getting a lot of feedback that it is a highly valued program, then we can bring it back in a way that it might be more of a cost recovery program. We're not allowed to charge more than the tree cost us, but we do have costs with pickup and delivery and bringing them to the community, which is also a significant expense for the program, which is done by the Public Works Department. There's also time involved with taking the orders and administering them and such. So we just want to take a year off the program, but it's council's cost, so it's up to council to make that decision on what they would like to do.
Deputy Reeve.
Do you have any record of how many of these trees go rural?
Pardon?
Go to the rural area as compared to town?
No, I do not. I know how many of what species are ordered and picked up, but I do not have a by ward or area like that. I do know that the program permits rural residents 2 trees and in-town residents 1 tree.
Councillor Slate. I will move the motion as it reads.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Ritzman-Tenanga. Deputy Reed, further?
I know that there's a lot of rural people do this, use these trees, plant these trees to replace trees that have been taken out along the roadside and things like that. Here's an instance again, we're taking things away from the rural area. Same as the flowers, if you want to take the flowers away from the town area, then you can take the trees away from the rural area.
Councillor Hallahan.
I'm saying the same as what Councillor Campbell is on this too, because I see a lot of trees have been taken down through the townships, which have to be taken down. They're in bad shape. They're all the same age. And for replacement, we shouldn't go back into. So whether we replace them as our own cost or as we give them to the property owner, we still want our tree budget. We still want the trees.
Huh?
They don't all have to be planted at the cemetery. They can be planted on the roadside too, just as the county does it.
I just wanted to share that we're not suggesting we discontinue the program. We want a year to assess the program and bring it back for council's consideration.
But we're telling you, Pat, that we don't want to stop the program, or some of us do not want to stop the program.
Okay. I'm just
making
the report.
So the issue is that I don't. Where my position is on this is that It's one of those things where if you take something away, but you will get it back, because it says right here, under council direction, mind you, that it will come back to council. So if it doesn't come back to council, whose deal is it? It's our deal, because we requested it to come back. Nowhere does it say it's discontinued forever. It's our policy. We determine what policy is going to be assessed and not assessed. The issue is that you take something away to understand how the service is provided today. If you were to come to me in 6 months or a year, and you had every rural person in the municipality have a different saying about this program, then I might have a different saying. But I have no idea. And the problem is that it's not saying it's discontinued. It's suspended for 1 year to find out what the service is we have available to us and how it's being utilized. It sounds to me right now it's not being utilized to its full capacity. So I don't see the issue about discontinuing something to see if it's going to be utilized in its capacity and how it's going to come back. Explain that to me.
Is this something new, Deputy?
It used to be a township policy, especially in town. If the town removed a tree, the town had to replace the tree. I don't know if they still do that or not. You're long enough to know. But that used to be a township policy. But I don't think they have ever replaced trees that have been taken down in the rural area, because a lot of our older trees are getting old. And I know there's a lot of people are replanting these trees along our roadsides, these trees that they get. I have myself. And I think it's something, once you take something away, even though we say we're going to bring it back, most of the time it doesn't come back.
Councillor Slade.
So what I'm hearing that we have a policy or a bylaw, potentially, that we don't know that we're following it. So my suggestion is, instead of harnessing on this, is request staff to review the policy, if there is one, that states if the municipality takes a tree down, it needs to replace it. That will do the same thing as this. What you're telling me. That's what you're telling me.
It used to be a policy. I don't know if it is. Whether they've kept it up or not, I don't know.
Pat?
So I am aware, because I placed the order, that each department is provided an opportunity to order additional trees on top of these, and they do take advantage of that. Typically, we order 3 or 4 for the campground every year. We order some for replacement trees. So I know that, I want to say it was 2 years ago that a number of trees were taken down on Dinsley Street, and a number of trees were ordered specifically through this program and planted to replace those. Obviously, they were giant trees, and we replaced them with young ones, but that was done. So staff are ordering more trees than just the public tree program. At this time, there's no need to order additional trees because we have a stockpile at the cemetery. They're not left at the cemetery. They're moved there and placed in to replace trees as they're taken out, or added to our parks, or added when trees are taken down. I'm not suggesting that, so I just wanted to share that there is some replanting done with the trees. When I speak to Public Works, I'm only saying this for you, Sean, because you're so new. Stu will say, yeah, we'll grab a tree from the cemetery and we'll put it in. So last year we lost one at the campground. He grabbed one from the cemetery and replaced it. So I know that's going on. I cannot speak to whether there's a formal policy or not. That is not in my recesses.
Councillor Hallahan.
Take these trees that they don't all have to be planted at the cemetery. $3,500 budget for the trees. Take them, plant them in the rural area.
Councillor Biden.
I think our staff can chew gum and walk at the same time. I mean, we could continue the program this year and investigate whether it's working or not, or are there ways of improving it. If there's a concern that by discontinuing it for a year, it may never appear again, maybe that's the way to solve this. And make sure that we're taking advantage of it, and we have a tree program that really works.
Pardon me for, I think we need to take a look at it. And rather than you can just come and pick up the tree, or in the case last year was or 2017 was the first time that I used it, and I took 2 red oaks. I think one of the things that we should look at is at least a partial payment for the tree to have it. And I'm not against a little smaller order and looking at the trees that the residents prefer and maybe making it a little smaller order. And we may, in budget discussions, even put forward a nominal payment towards those trees. I know that what I did this past year was over 200 trees that I ordered from Maitland Valley. And I paid for them all on my own, and I paid for having the planting done because I wasn't able to do it myself. But I think we're spinning our wheels here, and that even reduce the program a little this year, but investigate putting that whoever gets the trees has some skin in the game. Not necessarily all costs, but I think it would make it a more resilient program, and we would have stronger use. Council, take what you will from those comments. That I'm not leaving the chair to make the motion for a change, but
we already have a motion.
the motion's on the floor. That
I just have one more small comment.
Okay.
Anyone, if you would take a drive through the municipality and see the number of trees that have reached their age limit that are falling down, and the boys are trying to keep up to the trees dying on the roadside, that would tell you the story right there.
well, the number of ash and alum, that there's systemic problems.
It's unbelievable. They don't grow unless you plant them.
Just one more comment. I don't think people would complain if they had to pay a small fee for a tree, especially in the rural area, because they have been getting good trees.
Just replace what you did.
So, does everybody know how they're voting? Those in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? That motion is defeated. Is there a substitute motion? If you read Campbell?
I'll make a motion that we get rid of the trees and encourage the public work fellows to replace some of the trees along the roadsides that have come out. I know they do some, but they've taken a lot out this year. They're doing a lot of work on the roadsides.
So that anything that isn't picked up, they would take a look at a number of the roadsides. Do I have a second? Do you have that, Richard? You're seconding that, right? You have a comment, Brock?
I'd like to add an amendment that staff be directed to evaluate the program during this year to decide whether it's viable in future years.
Okay.
That can be added, Richard?
You trees, well, if you have extra trees, let me know.
Any
Ray and
further
I will
discussion?
plant them.
Oh, I just wanted to understand, so the motion is that the tree program would remain as is for 2018. Okay, And then extra trees, we're not adding additional trees for roadside planting. Okay, I just want to make sure that Sean and I have it clear in the wording, Richard, so that
There's trees.
when we walk away, we know what we're ordering tomorrow. Perfect.
Same as last year.
Councillor Singh.
So, just so in this conversation, the budget for trees is the tree program. Whatever budget you guys used to put in your other budgets for trees, is that staying the same or going away? What I'm hearing consensus here is it's all staying the same, and whatever tree program you had, if you have 100 trees left over, you're planting them on the roadside, is what I'm hearing. That's what I'm getting out of this deal. Is that what I'm to understand?
That's what I understand.
That's what you wanted in moving that? Okay. Mover and seconder. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, moving to 6.3.4, Victim Services, Huron County request for a reduced fee for ice. Richard?
Make that motion.
Okay. Seconder?
That's
Seconds,
before you
or same
said-
seconds? Save your voice, Richard. Any discussion? Councillor Singh.
Through you, Reeve, to Pat, is the intention then that this rate would then be a rate that would be established for all community groups in this type of instance? So that when an instance where a community group like Victim Services requests something, that we wouldn't necessarily need to have a motion to each one of these requests? Is that the intention?
Yes, the second part of the motion is that this, when we revisit the fee and bylaw, the bylaw and fees and rates, that this would then be identified as the community rate for this kind, absolutely. So that we would then as staff know what we're to tell people when they call in for ice rates. I would also recommend at that time, we would probably give a ball diamond rate at the same time as well. It's missing from the bylaw. So we would do that and at the time when we're looking at all the rates and fees. Yes.
When they put in this request, Pat, were suggesting a lower fee. Are they happy with this fee?
Can't speak to that because I haven't responded to their request. I haven't had council direction.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Moving to Public Works, there's 6.4.1, MW Simpson Construction Development Agreement.
The recommendation for this item is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the Director of Public Works report dated November 6, 2017 regarding the MW Simpson Construction Limited Development Agreement for information purposes, and further that the Township of North Huron authorizes the Reeve and Clerk to enter into the development agreement between the Township and MW Simpson Construction Limited. And further that the Council of the Township of North Huron approves an exception to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw number 102, 2017 to be passed at the November 6, 2017 council meeting.
You're moving. Seconder, Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga. All in favor? Carried. Okay, moving to 6.71, Bruce County Child Care Fee Subsidy Schedule.
The recommendation we have here is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approves the Bruce Child Care Fee Subsidy Schedule, and further that Council approves an exception to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 96, 2017 to be passed at the November 6, 2017 council meeting.
Do I have a mover? Councillor Vaughn, Deputy Reeve Campbell. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. 6.7.2, J.E. Hodgins lots.
The recommendation for this one is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the CAO dated November 6, 2017 regarding the transfer and merger of two small parcels of municipally owned land being lots 30 and 31, Plan 451 respectively. And further, that the Council of the Township of North Huron authorizes staff to give acknowledgement and direction to register bylaw 4 of 2014 and bylaw 5 of 2014. And further, that the Council of the Township of North Huron adopts bylaw 102, 2017, being a bylaw to enter into a development with J.E. Hodgins Lumber Wingham Limited. And further, the Council of the Township of North Huron directs staff to issue a letter to J.E. Hodgins Lumber Wingham Limited advising that road construction costs in the amount of $19,741.82 is due prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Do I have a mover? Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga. Seconder. Councillor Syed. Discussion, go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. One, how does one miss registering a bylaw? Can somebody explain to me the process of registering a bylaw and why these two potentially didn't get registered?
So this is an issue that goes back to 2014, and there was some, I'll call it controversy issues at the time. For example, one was in terms of how much they owed in taxes. So until that matter was resolved, it was decided not to proceed with the registration of those bylaws. Now the issue has been successfully resolved with the party, and as such, now in a position to move forward with the registration of those bylaws. It's recommended that the bylaws be registered prior to, you'll see the motion in terms of the way it's written out, that we register the bylaws first, and then we enter, into the development agreement.
Is everybody clear? Councillor Syed.
Has the discussion been with the developer about the 19,000, and is it going to be a sticker shock when they get a piece of paper that says they owe 19,000? Is my question.
They shouldn't. There's correspondence in the file dating back to 2013 where they were advised, and there was recent correspondence from earlier this year in which the solicitor, there was discussion between the two solicitors, at which point and there was discussion around that, but it kind of that kind of got parked, and then the conversation carried on around the other matters that have now been, as I've indicated, resolved. So the 19,000 figure has been floating since 2013, and it's been communicated in writing to the property owner.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, 6.7.4, the accommodation feasibility report. 6.7.3, the Economic Development Committee applications.
The recommendation we have here is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives a report of the CAO dated November 6, 2017 regarding appointments to the North Huron Economic Development Committee, and further that Council adopts bylaw 103, 2017, which appoints the following individuals to the Economic Development Committee: Councillor Trevor Sight, Councillor Bill Knott, Karen Stewart, Blythe BIA Representative, Glenn Mangan, Wingham BIA Representative, Dave Tiffin, Financial Sector Representative, Wingham Ward, and Murray Simpson, Construction Sector Representative, Wingham Ward, and further that Council approves an exception to 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 103, 2017 to be passed at the November 6, 2017 council meeting.
Do I have a mover? Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga. Councillor Vauden seconds. Discussion? Councillor Vauden.
I think I like the point made here that we should go on recruiting people to come in, and particularly we should be asking for people from the East Wallanosh ward to represent that ward.
Councillor Singh.
In kind of corresponds with that, I think it's more apt to be not necessarily the ward, but the sector. Agricultural in my mind is that sector's biggest draw. And I think to me, that's the one that really should be on somebody to represent that sector in the economic development. Should be, whether they're from East Wallanosh, it would be bonus, I think, as a municipality as a whole to encompass everybody, but that sector is, I think, more important than where they're from. Because I think East Wallanosh would be beneficial too, but the sector is more important.
Good comment.
Yeah, and we can certainly reach out to the Agricultural Association, Huron County Federation, for perhaps they have an individual or a recommendation for us to approach.
Okay. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. Getting back to 6.7.4, the accommodation feasibility report.
The recommendation here is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby authorizes the Region Clerk to sign the agreement with the Province of Ontario to receive and monitor funds for the Village of Blythe accommodation feasibility study as previously approved in the clerk's report dated August 8th, 2017.
Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga and Councillor Vaughton. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Moving to correspondence, 7.1, Royal Canadian Legion Branch 180, Remembrance Day Service.
I will move it.
Councillor Syke, Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga. All in favor? Carried. Okay, 7.2, Wingham Lions Santa Claus Parade, November 25th, 2017. You're moving, Councillor Hallahan?
Yes.
And Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga is seconding. All in favor? Carried. Pardon? Okay. Further to that, council have any opinion whether we want a float or whether we will work with the fire department again, or how we do this? For your benefit, Mr. Fire Chief, the fire department has usually provided transportation for council in past years.
More for Yolanda and Ray.
There's some of us that can't walk on a break, they have to ride something.
Anything?
Well, it's council.
But basically, I think we have a little bit of time before the 25th. Some of those details can be discussed, not necessarily in the council meeting, and see what options are available. Okay, I think that's the best way to leave it for right now. Okay. The Reeves activity report. Basically, since our last council meeting, I have found it almost like a holiday. That there hasn't been that many things that I have been pushed and pulled to, so I will move right to council member reports. 8.2. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to kind of verbally update council as to, so the Police Services Board has been given notification by the association to begin negotiating the terms of their agreement. Their agreement expires on December 31st, 2017. So basically, based on that discussion, myself as chair and Joan Vandermeer as vice chair will be leading the negotiations on that with regards to the association. So that will begin in the next couple of weeks, and the expectation or the thoughts, well, that should be finalized hopefully with no concerns or no issues before the end of the year. So I just wanted to give council that update as to negotiations with regards to the association of the William Police Association. And the other, just an update for council, is the agreement with regards to the Police Services Board with the Owen Sound Police Services Board with regards to the dispatch of the Wingham Police Service. So that agreement also ceases on December 31st. And the chief is working to find some contacts at the Police Services Board of Owen Sound to get me so that we can begin that discussion about renegotiating that. All of this under the impression that we do have a costing. The township has a costing from the OPP, and until that decision is made, we're running as no change. So there has been some discussions with regards to the Police Services Board on what that contract looks like. The fact that whether it's a 1 year or 3 year or whatever, so there'll be some discussions with regards to that as the fact that we're coming into a municipal election soon and that stuff, to see whether it makes sense that we run into that. So I think I just wanted to give the council an update on that, because those are two hot button topics that have hit the Police Services Board table in the last 2 months or last month. So I just wanted to give you the update there.
Well, thank you very much for that heads up. Is there anything else from councilors? Okay, moving to a notice of motion, 9.1. Councillor Knott is a request for staff to investigate mobile photo radar providers.
So this is a notice of motion. I'll read it, but we will bring it back to the next council meeting for consideration. It's that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby requests staff to investigate mobile photo radar providers and prepare a report outlining the feasibility of engaging such a provider in North Huron. So that will be on the November 20th council meeting for consideration.
Okay. Moving to bylaws, 10.1, bylaw number 96, 2017. Take that out.
Sure. That bylaw 96, 2017 being a bylaw to authorize the Reeve clerk to sign on behalf of council an agreement with the County of Bruce for childcare services be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and engrossed in the bylaw book.
Okay, Councillor Syke, Councillor Vyden. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 97, 2017, being a bylaw to authorize civil marriage solemnization services by the Township of North Huron.
That bylaw number 97, 2017, being a bylaw to authorize civil marriage solemnization services by the Township of North Huron be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Hallahan, Deputy Reeve Campbell. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 98, 2017, being a bylaw to establish speed limits for areas designated as community safety zones in the Township of North Huron.
That bylaw number 98, 2017, being a bylaw to establish speed limits for areas designated as community safety zones in the Township of North Huron be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Vodden, Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga. All in favor? Carried. Okay, bylaw number 99, 2017, being a bylaw to deem lots in a registered plan not to be registered.
That bylaw number 99, 2017, being a bylaw to deem lots in a registered plan not to be registered, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Raven clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Deputy Reeve Campbell, Councillor Sype. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 100, 2017.
That bylaw number 100, 2017, being a bylaw to authorize the Raven clerk to sign on behalf of council a contribution agreement for funding through the Rural Economic Development RED program between the Corporation of the Township of North Huron, Blythe Business Improvement Area, and the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs for the project known as the Village of Blythe Hotel Feasibility Study, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Raven clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Vodden, Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 101, 2017.
That bylaw number 101, 2017, being a bylaw to authorize the Raven clerk to sign on behalf of council a development agreement between the Corporation of the Township of North Huron and J.E. Hodgins Lumber Wingham Limited, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Raven clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Deputy Reeve Campbell, Councillor Sype. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 102, 2017.
That bylaw number 102, 2017, being a bylaw to authorize the Raven clerk to sign on behalf of council a development agreement between the Corporation of the Township of North Huron and M.W. Simpson Construction Limited, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Raven clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Hallahan, Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 103, 2017.
That bylaw number 103, 2017, being a bylaw to appoint members of the council to the Corporation of the Township of North Huron Economic Development Committee, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Raven clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Vodden, Councillor Sype. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 104, 2017.
That bylaw number 104, 2017, being a bylaw to authorize the Raven clerk to sign on behalf of council an agreement of purchase and sale between the Corporation of the Township of North Huron and New Wood Carpentry Limited for the property located at 593 Cedar Street, Wingham, Ontario. Be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Raven clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Hallahan, Deputy Reeve Campbell. All in favor? Carried. Okay, any announcements? Other business? Closed session and reporting out. Do I have a motion to go in camera? Councillor Sype, Councillor Vodden, all in favor? Carried. We will have a short recess now.